I found texts between my husband and my son's teenage girlfriend, but what they said about me behind my back cut even deeper than the affair itself. When I read the text on his screen, I thought I was hallucinating. "I miss your sausage," it said, followed by a heart emoji, from Madison, my son's 18-year-old girlfriend. My husband, Daniel, was the one she was texting. What happened next shattered everything I thought I knew about the man I married, and destroyed my son's innocence in the process. I'm Natalie, 42, a stay-at-home mom living in Portland. My husband Daniel, 49, works in wealth management and we've been married for almost 2 decades. We have 2 children, Landon, our 18-year-old senior, and Grace, our 15-year-old sophomore. Until recently, I thought our lives were, if not exciting, at least safe. Predictable. Daniel and I had grown apart over the years. That kind of slow erosion that happens when careers take priority, kids get older, and you stop seeing each other as people. I chalked up his distance to stress. Work. Maybe even a little midlife ennui. What I didn't know was that he'd started something that made my stomach turn, an affair with Madison, the girl who's been coming over for dinner since they were freshmen in high school. Madison is bubbly, sweet, the kind of girl who always remembered my birthday with a homemade card. I loved her like a daughter. Which made it all the more horrifying when I saw that text while Daniel was compulsively closing out apps on his iPhone. He didn't notice the iMessage thread peeking through the Open Apps window. But I did. And it wasn't just the text. A few days later, I found a folder buried on his desktop filled with BDSM porn, dozens of saved videos, chat logs, and bookmarked pages. Then came the photos. Pictures of Madison from her Instagram, all fully clothed, but still, it was clear what they meant to him. He was obsessed. I started paying closer attention. During the day, while he was at work, I checked his phone, watching his interactions with Madison unfold like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. He joked about me. Compared me to her. Called me old and boring while Madison laughed with strings of emojis like I was the punchline to their private joke. The one that broke me? Can you believe she tried to wear that red dress again? Looked like a sausage casing about to burst. Madison replied, LMAO. Maybe she thinks it's still 2005, skull face with tears of joy. 20 years of marriage, and that's how he talked about me. To her. The texts weren't just cruel, they were surgical in their mockery. They ridiculed the way I walked, the way I spoke, the way I made lasagna. At least you're fun, Daniel wrote to her once. Being with her feels like drowning in oatmeal. I sat in the dark, rereading everything. Every single message. My hands trembled. My heart raced. I couldn't cry, I was too stunned to even make a sound. A month ago, I found a pair of lace thongs in our bedroom. Definitely not mine. Not Grace's either. And I told myself the stupidest lie, maybe I bought them and forgot? The truth was right in front of me the entire time. And then it hit me like a freight train. Madison had just turned 18 5 months ago. That's when Daniel started acting different. Lighter. Younger. Paranoid, even deleting texts, turning off his location. Did he wait until she turned 18 before starting this? Had it been going on longer? I felt paralyzed. Not just because I'd been betrayed, but because of who he betrayed. Our son. My sweet, sensitive, firstborn son who adored this girl. Who made her playlists and painted her terrible watercolor portraits and carved her name into his skateboard. How do you tell your child the person he loves is sleeping with his father? I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. I hadn't confronted Daniel yet. I was too afraid of the fallout. Of what it would do to Landon. To Grace. To me. And maybe, just maybe, I was afraid of what I'd become once the truth was fully out. Because something was waking up inside me, something ruthless. This was no longer just about heartbreak. This was war. I didn't breathe a word to Daniel. Not at first. Instead, I started collecting, quietly, ruthlessly. Like I was building a case, not just against his lies, but against the version of myself that tolerated them for so long. I copied everything. Screenshots of messages. His call logs with Madison, long, late-night calls that lasted hours. I installed spyware that synced his texts to my cloud. I even started photographing his credit card statements when he left them on the counter, tracking receipts for suspiciously expensive dinners, hotel bookings, and hundreds of dollars spent on a site I'd never heard of, Velvet Vixens. And then I found the OnlyFans charges. So many I had to scroll. He wasn't just cheating. He was unraveling. Or maybe this was who he always was, and I had just never wanted to see it. I found more texts. Some from dating apps. I recognized none of the names. And all of the women? Young. Like, really young. Madison wasn't a one-off. She was a type. By now I was operating on adrenaline, caffeine, and something colder, rage. I searched his computer and found a folder labeled Study Materials. Inside were dozens of saved photos from Instagram accounts of girls who looked barely out of high school. One night, I found a Catholic schoolgirl outfit in the back of his closet. Tag still on. I could barely keep the bile down. The worst was a voice note I overheard by accident while checking his synced audio files. Daniel whispering, "You make me feel young again, Maddie. Not like Natalie. She's predictable. You're different. Dangerous. Dangerous." That word repeated in my head like an alarm bell. He was playing the sage, the mentor. Giving her rides home from school. Talking to her about career goals. He was grooming her, and I missed it. All of it. Because I was too busy being the mom, the wife, the invisible furniture in the house. I had to tell someone. So I called my brother, Matthew. Former Marine. Divorce attorney. Not the kind of guy who flinches easily. I told him everything. He didn't speak for 5 full seconds. Then he said, "I know a guy. He's a junkyard dog in a suit. Let's get you out clean." By the end of that week, I had a lawyer. A private storage unit. And a USB with all the files he'd need if Daniel ever tried to play dirty. But I still hadn't told Landon. That came later, after I picked him and Grace up from school and drove to Matthew's house. Grace kept asking why I was crying at red lights. I sat them both down in the living room. My voice shook. "I have to tell you something. Something really hard." Grace clenched her fists. Landon looked at me like I was about to tell him someone died. When I said Madison's name, Landon's face went blank. No reaction. No expression. Like his body couldn't compute what I was saying. And then his hands started shaking. He didn't cry. He just stood up, walked outside, and sat on the front steps for over an hour. Grace, on the other hand, exploded. "She's disgusting. He's disgusting," she yelled. I knew something was off. I saw the way he stared at my friends. Even Madison. She stormed into the guest room and slammed the door. I called Madison's mom that night. We'd once hosted Thanksgiving together. I told her everything. She went silent for a moment, then said, "Give me an hour." 2 hours later, she texted me every message she pulled from Madison's phone. 3 months of history. It was all there. The flirty messages. The late-night selfies. Him calling her sweet girl. Her calling him Daddy D. And the clincher, a message from Madison saying, "I've never felt this safe with anyone before." It was the same thing I said to Daniel after he stayed with me in the hospital when I had that miscarriage 10 years ago. Safe. What a goddamn joke. Madison's mom told me she sobbed when she confronted her. But Madison wouldn't back down. "You don't understand," she said. "He gets me." I wanted to scream. This wasn't love. This was a 49-year-old man preying on an 18-year-old girl whose father abandoned her and who clung to any man who gave her attention. That weekend, I asked Daniel to hop on a Zoom call. I told him I needed help finalizing our mortgage refinance. But the moment the call connected, I hit record. "Paul," I said slowly, "we need to talk about what's been going on." His expression changed instantly, like a mask had been ripped off. "I know about Madison," I said, my voice steady. His face flushed deep red. "You don't know the context," he snapped. "Context." That word again. He kept repeating it like it would summon some excuse that could erase it all. When I told him I had screenshots, recordings, the whole 9 yards, he exploded. Slammed his fist on the table. "You have no right to take my kids. You're ruining this family." His voice cracked with something primal. Not regret. Not shame. Fear. That's when I knew he wasn't sorry. He was cornered. And he was dangerous. That Zoom call wasn't a confrontation. It was a warning flare. This wasn't just about exposing a cheater anymore. It was about protecting my children from a man who had learned to hide in plain sight. When I was 16, I watched my mother sob in the kitchen while my father packed a suitcase in silence. He'd been caught cheating. Not with a neighbor or a coworker, but with my best friend's older sister. She was 19. I remember the look on my mom's face. Not anger. Not sadness. Just disbelief. Like she couldn't believe she had lived next to the bomb that would destroy her and never saw it ticking. She stayed with him for 5 more years. I promised myself I would never be that woman. I would never ignore the beeping. But now, sitting in my brother's guest bedroom, that same disbelief was crawling under my skin. The sound of my son's silence was louder than any siren. Landon hadn't said a word to me since the day I told him. He just sat in Matthew's backyard every night, headphones in, staring at the fence. Grace, meanwhile, turned into a human landmine. Slamming doors. Screaming at nothing. Asking questions I couldn't answer. Did he look at my friends like that too? Did he ever touch them? Why didn't you see it, Mom? The truth was, I did see something. I just didn't want it to be true. That Sunday, Madison tried to contact Landon. She messaged him on every platform. She even dropped off a handwritten letter. I didn't open it. Landon did. I found it crumpled under his bed later. The last line was burned into my memory. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He promised me we'd start fresh after I left for college. College. That's when Daniel planned to make it official. I felt the bile rise again. I called Madison's mom to confirm, and she broke down crying. "Natalie, she's trying to run away with him." She showed me texts. Madison saying she'd buy a burner phone. That she was looking at train routes. "He's the only person who ever made me feel loved," she wrote. My stomach flipped. This wasn't just an affair. It was a blueprint. Daniel had positioned himself as her savior. Her safe place. He used words like mentorship and protection to mask what he was doing. And Madison, barely 18, coming from a broken home, latched on like her life depended on it. But it was more than that. Because as I sifted through old photos one night, trying to find something, anything to make sense of when it all started, I found something that stopped my heart. A picture from 3 years ago. Grace's 12th birthday party. Balloons. Cake. Madison smiling with Landon in the backyard. Innocent enough. Except Daniel was in the background. And he was staring at Madison. Not in a friendly way. Not like a dad. His gaze locked on her like he was studying her. Like he was waiting. I remembered how he volunteered to take them all to the skating rink that year. How he joked that he wanted to be the cool dad. How Madison started coming over more after that. And suddenly, it clicked. He didn't wait until she was 18 to start this. He waited until it was legal. But he'd been grooming her long before. It made me physically ill. The next morning, my lawyer called. "Have you considered filing for full emergency custody?" he asked. "I'm considering burning the house down," I said flatly. But I knew what he meant. So I filed. We served Daniel with a notice the next day. Matthew and I drove to the courthouse together. As we walked in, I passed a teenage girl sitting on the bench. She looked about 17. Had braces. Clutched a phone in her hand. She wasn't Madison. But she could have been. And that's when the rage hit me all over again. How many other girls had he been mentoring? How many times had I looked the other way? That night, I went through his computer again. This time, deeper. Into forums. Message boards. Places he thought I'd never look. I found screen names he used to post in chat rooms. One of them had a profile that listed favorite ages. 18 to 22, it read. But the chat logs told a different story. One girl he messaged listed her age as 16. And the things he said to her. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't a midlife crisis. This was a pattern. And Madison wasn't the beginning. She was the tip of the iceberg. I printed everything. Saved it to 3 different drives. Hid one in my brother's safe. That night, I watched my daughter fall asleep with her arm around our dog. I sat on the floor outside her door, holding one of Daniel's old button-downs. I used to think it smelled like home. Now it smelled like poison. I burned it in the backyard. The flame flared quick and high. Almost eager. I watched it turn to ash. And I knew, then and there, that I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to bring him down. The courthouse smelled like old paper and stale air. Daniel sat across from me in a navy suit he hadn't worn since Grace's baptism. His hair was slicked back like he was trying to look composed, but his hands twitched constantly. Like they were trying to remember the feel of control. The judge reviewed the restraining order request first. My lawyer laid it all out: screenshots, call logs, forum activity, OnlyFans transactions, and the full printed chat logs with Madison. Daniel's attorney, a twitchy man named Clay with a voice like a mosquito, objected to nearly every piece of evidence. Speculation. Invasion of privacy. Circumstantial. But then the judge said something that snapped the room into silence. "Mr. Whitmore, is it true that you were in regular contact with your son's girlfriend before her 18th birthday?" Daniel opened his mouth. Then shut it. Clay whispered something in his ear. Then Daniel said, "I was offering her mentorship. She needed guidance." "Mentorship?" the judge repeated. "Involving suggestive messages and secret meetings?" Daniel's jaw flexed. His eyes briefly flicked to mine, cold, resentful. "She turned 18 in January," he said. "Anything after that is consensual and legal." The courtroom shifted uncomfortably. I leaned forward slightly, voice steady. "What about before January? The ski trip where she was too sick to come with Landon but stayed back at the house? The tutoring sessions? The rides home where she was gone for hours?" He flinched. I continued, "And what about the outfit you bought her? The one I found hidden in the garage? The one that matched the private role-play fantasy you posted about under the name Captain Carmine?" Clay jumped up. "Your Honor, this is wildly inappropriate." But the judge held up a hand. "Ms. Whitmore, do you have documentation?" I passed him the USB. That was the first time Daniel's hand stopped twitching. Because he knew exactly what was on it. The hearing was adjourned with the temporary order granted. Full custody of Grace remained with me. Daniel was barred from contacting either of the kids directly or indirectly. As we left the courtroom, I heard him say under his breath, "This isn't over." I didn't look back. That night, Madison ran away from home. Her mother called me in a panic around 2 a.m. She left a note, she said, voice shaking. Said she's done being treated like a child. That she's going to find Paul. Paul. Not Daniel. Paul. He had a different name for her. That wasn't surprising anymore. It was calculated. My brother sent a group of private investigators he knew through a security contact. Within 24 hours, they tracked them both. Daniel had rented a lakeside cabin 40 minutes from the city. He was with her. Despite everything. Despite the court order. Despite the fact that this girl was still technically a witness. I brought the information to the police. But unless she pressed charges or admitted coercion, there was nothing they could do. She was 18. Legally. But then I got a call that changed everything. It was Grace's friend Harper. Shaky voice. Whispering. Mrs. Whitmore, I think something weird happened. She told me that 2 years ago, when she was 14, she came over for a sleepover. She'd forgotten her charger downstairs and went to get it late at night. She caught Daniel in the kitchen with one of Grace's bikinis. Not folded. Not put away. Held. He froze. Then smiled. Just doing laundry, he said. She didn't tell anyone until now. And she wasn't the only one. In the next few days, 2 more friends of Grace came forward. Nothing happened to them physically, but they each described moments that felt off. One said he complimented her leggings. Another said he offered her wine during a backyard party when no one was watching. They were isolated events. Easy to dismiss. But together? It painted a picture that made my blood freeze. He wasn't just grooming Madison. He had been circling for years. And I let him host sleepovers. I let him cook for them. I let him sit in the living room with them while I folded laundry upstairs. That night, I called Madison's mom. I need your help, I said. Together, we made a plan. We arranged a fake meeting, told Madison that her mom wanted to talk, just the 3 of us at a neutral place. A cafe she loved. Madison agreed. When she showed up, I could barely recognize her. She looked thin. Exhausted. Smudged eyeliner. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. He said I should cut contact with you, she said to her mom. That you'd never understand. I asked gently, Madison, when did this start? Really? She looked down at her nails. Before I turned 18, she whispered. Bingo. Now the police had something. She said it like a confession, not a statement. Like she was finally letting herself acknowledge it. I thought he loved me, she said. But when he saw how scared I was when we heard the cops were coming, he said, don't be stupid. We're fine. You're legal. That's when it hit me. He doesn't love me. He waited for me. We gave her time. Then took her to a crisis counselor. Madison agreed to give a full statement. And suddenly, Daniel wasn't just a cheater. He was a predator with a timeline. A record. A pattern. And soon, with Madison's permission and the support of the other girls, the district attorney would have enough to pursue charges. But before that, I had one final play. I sent Daniel an email. Subject line, checkmate. Inside, a single sentence. You don't get to hide anymore. Attached, the first page of the police report. The same night, his dating app profiles went offline. His OnlyFans account was deleted. The chat room aliases I'd tracked vanished. He was trying to erase himself. But it was too late. The wave was coming. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. The arrest didn't happen how I imagined. No dramatic knock at midnight. No public spectacle in front of cameras. Just a silent takedown in a Walgreens parking lot, 2 plainclothes officers, and a shocked look on Daniel's face as they cuffed him beside his Audi. Grace and I were watching a movie when my lawyer texted me the news. He's in custody. The charges include unlawful grooming, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, and possession of illicit material involving minors. They have him dead to rights. I cried. Not the quiet kind. Not delicate. The ugly, primal kind. Years of holding back splintered out of me like shrapnel. Grace climbed into my lap like she was 6 again, and we just held each other. Her tears were silent. But steady. The DA had moved fast, once Madison gave her full statement. Combined with testimony from Grace's friends, the chat room logs, and a buried folder I hadn't noticed before, full of zip files he named memories, they had enough. One of the files had timestamps that proved contact with Madison well before she turned 18. He was done. But the trial was just beginning. Daniel pled not guilty. He tried to spin it as a misunderstood mentorship turned consensual romance. His lawyer, now replaced by a more aggressive defense, tried to paint Madison as a troubled teen seeking attention, and me as a vengeful, unstable wife with an axe to grind. But the jury didn't buy it. Not after Madison took the stand and told them about the first time he texted her something inappropriate. She was 16. He was driving her home from a study group and asked her if she ever wore perfume just to see who noticed. She had screenshots. Old, blurry ones from a backup she didn't know she had. They showed a clear escalation, from sweet to creepy to explicit. The defense buckled. Daniel's bail was revoked. He was remanded until sentencing. And that's when the letters started. At first, they were to me. Emails begging for mercy. Think of the good times, he wrote. Don't let this be how our story ends. Then they turned venomous. You betrayed me. You poisoned our children. I blocked him. But the most disturbing one? He sent a handwritten letter to Grace. It arrived at Matthew's house in a plain envelope. No return address. Inside was a note scribbled in messy cursive. I'm still your father. Don't let her erase me. Grace didn't say a word. Just walked outside and lit it on fire in the backyard. Watched it curl and blacken in her palm. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But that night, she asked for the therapist's number I'd offered months ago. She was ready. 3 weeks before sentencing, I received a call I didn't expect. It was Madison's mother. I think she wants to talk to you, she said. I met Madison in a small cafe near the courthouse. She looked different. Stronger. Her hair tied back, eyes clear. No makeup. No filters. Why didn't you hate me? She asked. I did, I said. For a while. But then I realized, you were a victim. And he used you the same way he used all of us. Her chin trembled. He said you didn't care about him. That you made him feel small. I nodded. That's his favorite lie. Making people feel like rescuing him is their job. I believed everything he said, she whispered. I thought we'd run away. Start over. You still can, I said. But without him. For real this time. She smiled, just slightly. And then she handed me something. A USB drive. I found more, she said. Things he told me to delete. I didn't. Later, when I gave it to the DA, their eyes widened. You just gave us 5 more years. Sentencing day was cold. April wind howled through the courthouse steps like a warning. Daniel wore the same suit. But now, his face was sunken. Pale. He didn't meet my eyes as the judge read out the charges. 6 years. No parole for the first 3. Registered offender. Restrictions on proximity to minors. His lawyer tried one last plea. Your Honor, my client has expressed remorse. The judge cut him off. I've read the letters. I've seen the evidence. This man preyed on vulnerability and cloaked it in charm. There is no ambiguity here. When Daniel was led away, he glanced over his shoulder. Not at me. At Landon. My son was sitting behind me, tall and silent, jaw clenched. He didn't flinch. Didn't move. Didn't say goodbye. It's been 7 months now. Landon sees a therapist twice a week. He took a gap year from college, but just got a part-time job at a local bookstore. He doesn't talk about Madison much, but I know he still hurts. Grace? She's fierce. Funny. A little too wise for her age. But she dances again. Smiles. Went to prom last month in a red dress and combat boots. Madison moved away. Changed her number. Enrolled in a community college 3 states over. Her mom keeps me updated. She's doing better. And me? I cut my hair. Started painting again. Signed the divorce papers last week. The last thing Daniel ever said to me in court was this. "You'll regret doing this to me." He was wrong. I don't regret it. I only regret not seeing him for who he really was, sooner. But now? I'm awake. And I will never sleepwalk through my own life again.